All right, so again, new tool here. All right, it's our 4H pencil. Again, the H and the B's. H tells you that the graphite and clay mixture is harder than the B pencils, which are softer. The difference is the size of the point. If you look at a regular number 2 pencil, you can see the thickness of the point is a little greater. And the graphite, there's more graphite than clay in B pencils. There's more clay than graphite in H pencils, giving it a lighter line. So a lot of times these are called layout pencils. We're going to use it as a technique or as a tool for blocking, just like we would using our pencil lightly. Now you can use the H pencil on your rough here. All right, this is going to be your rough, and you're going to have your can. And we're going to do the same blocking techniques that we did for our other forms, and we're going to try to keep the can about life size. So if I do the same thing we did before as far as setup, right? Here's about the top of my can. Now again, I'm just using this looking at it at mid-eye level, but when we have it on our table in front of us, we're going to be seeing it more like this, all right? So from the angle that we're looking at it. So the height of that, I can look at it and I can say, all right, well, the top of the back of the can, it's about here. And the bottom of the can, it's about there. All right, see the nice light mark? And now again, I want to do the same thing I did before, and I want to give myself that line of symmetry. While I have the can there, I want to find out where the front is and where this shoulder is. So I give myself those points of reference. So if it's sitting in front of me and I'm looking at it like that, you can see the front edge of the can is about here, right about there. And that shoulder about here. Now I got to think of the width. So again, this was once a cylinder. And if you notice, there's 2 cylinders, right? If we hold it, if we're looking at it straight on, there's a wider cylinder and then a narrower cylinder. These ellipses that make up the top and the bottom, all right, they didn't quite stay an ellipse once the can was crushed. It's still pretty much a circle looking at it straight on, but it changed shape a little bit as it was rotated. So what I want to do is I want to find the width of this, and then I want to find the width of the shoulders here, okay? So from there, if I kind of hold it up like this, again, with the width, if I'm looking at it like that, I can see the width of the one part of the can is about here. I can see the width of this part right here. It's kind of there. All right, so that's the width of the narrower part of the cylinder. These shoulders here, right, they come out a little further. So they're going to be out about here and about there. All right, so that gives us our overall proportions of our can. So now all we've got to do is give ourselves those shapes. So this is the smaller cylinder, which also meets up with, right, that smaller cylinder also meets up with where the hip changes and then goes down. So I need to have that vertical going all the way. Okay, so I'm going to set up those 2 cylinders. Look at light blocking lines. All right, so I've got 2 verticals for the narrower part. Now I got to go 2 verticals for the wider part. All right, very simple, very light. I can erase if I have to, move lines in, move lines out, whatever the case may be. Now, again, next thing I got to look at from me looking at this on the table is the degree of curve. If I'm looking at it like this, what's the degree of curve of the base? So I got to put that degree of curve in, which would be the base of the ellipse. And again, it only goes as wide as this, but my blocking lines can go a little bit further because I'm using my arm to do that. All right. So now what I want to look at is this is the front of the can here. I want to get that elliptical shape from the angle that I'm looking at it. I want to get that elliptical shape as accurate as possible. Because again, we're talking about a couple different surface planes here, right? We have the interior surface plane here, and then we have the rim that comes up. It's almost like a cone shape, kind of goes down in like a crater. So you can see this area to the front is thinner, but I can still see a highlight on the top of it. This area at the back goes from here to here, but there's also still that thin rim highlight along the top. So I want to keep that shape. This is the widest point of it, and it comes down to here, and it stops back here. So I want to really focus in on getting that ellipse accurate. Now that's a bunch of lines. That's going to get confusing when I try to go to put the values in. But right now on my rough, I'm just trying to get accurate proportion. Okay? So now if I look at where that's the width part, right? Now I can see that the shoulder here comes in and then comes down. I already know that right here I've marked. So I've got to establish this ellipse. You can see the curve on that ellipse. Let me put it back where I'm looking at it. All right, the curve on that ellipse. And that comes out to the widest point, which is where that shoulder starts. All right, so I have to be sure that I get that widest point. Now I can see where, okay, I think I made it a little bit too wide there. I'm going to bring that in a little bit. Now I can look at the angle of that shoulder and what's the angle of that going up. So I've got to look from where I'm looking, and I can see that it kind of comes from behind here and curves down. Same thing. Comes from behind here and curves down. All right, so that gives me the width that I need at the top. And I'm not going too dark. I'm still using the H pencil. Just trying to tighten up, getting a little bit more of the structural line in. Okay, from the lid and the rim of the can. And I'm just going to tighten up a little bit more. I don't want to get too dark here because I got to look at the shapes created by the wrinkles. All right. So I've got my basic form. I got to look at the angles now. From here, I can see that the line goes out and then down. So I almost just have two angles from the shoulder. So from the shoulder, the can goes out to about here and then down on an angle to here. Light line. On this side, I've got this curved crinkle in this way, right? So I'm coming down, then in, then around. So there's a few different things that you got to look at when you get to this edge. I can see that the shoulder comes down. This has to be a little bit bigger looking at it. And I can see it goes out, down. There's a crinkle right here, a contour crinkle right there. And then it just from that crinkle kind of comes down. I've got this large V-shaped value in there, like right in here. You can see, so this contour hits there and then comes up, meets out where that is. There's a little crinkle there, and then this comes down to here. Now, that kind of gave me the outer structure of the can. Now I've got to look at the inner structure of the can, where I've got these other creases and stuff, from the crunching and how the light is affecting those surfaces. All right, so I'm going to just continue to go in and look and see where those creases are and how they're going to create different values. So from this little corner right here, I can see that I've got a value that goes up, down, and in almost to the center of the can. And then there's this curved shape. And another little value edge there. I've got a crease here. It creates the edge of the shoulder. And then there's another crease there. And just kind of lightly go in. I'm using the H pencil. Again, this is my layout pencil. I'm not doing any shading yet. Just going in and laying out where all the values are going to need to go. Now what I want to do is I want to go back in and erase my blocking lines and check my structure overall, especially when we erase the blocking lines that interfere with the outer edge, right? Because the form itself, with all of those crinkles and wrinkles and creases, is definitely going to be different. Erase my line of symmetry here. Again, this is my rough. This is just me working on figuring out accurate proportion and scale. So that gives me a pretty good representation of my can without any significant areas of value yet, right? I never put this crease line right in here. So I got to put that crease line in as it comes down and make that a little bit darker, that kink right out to that point. And then I have some other values in there, but I'm not going to put any shading in on this right yet. I'm going to use this as a way to practice some of the shading techniques before I start on my final.